On March 27, the CARES Act was signed into law and provided supplemental funding to address the novel coronavirus pandemic. One major provision of importance to the higher education community is the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, or HERF for short. Totaling $14.25 billion, HERF is divided into three major buckets. The first bucket, amounting to 2.5% of the $14 billion, goes toward the fund for the improvement of post-secondary education programs. The second bucket, comprising 7.5% of the overall $14 billion, supports programs at minority-serving institutions. The third bucket, comprised of 90% of the overall $14 billion, equates to nearly $13 billion. This $13 billion is being distributed to institutions of higher education across the United States. Each institution is set to receive an amount that has been predetermined by a formula stipulated in the CARES Act. The formula takes into account the relative share of Pell Grant recipients enrolled full-time and the share of non-Pell recipient students. Students who were enrolled exclusively in distance education, i.e. online, prior to March 13, the date when the President declared the novel coronavirus pandemic a national emergency, are not taken into account. No matter the amount that an individual institution receives, the law requires that no less than 50% of this funding is given directly to an institution's students in the form of emergency grant aid. This money can be used to cover expenses directly impacted by the pandemic, such as food, housing, childcare, and healthcare, among others. The other 50% that an institution receives can be used to cover institutional costs for expanding technology capacities for delivering distance education, faculty training, and student housing and food needs. There are some restrictions on which students are eligible to receive emergency grant aid through HERF. According to an FAQ issued in late April, the Department of Education states that students must be Title IV eligible to receive grant aid. In practice, this means that institutions are likely to defer to whether a student has a FAFSA on file. While graduate students may be Title IV eligible, we know that not all graduate students file a FAFSA since they may be supported through other means, such as an assistantship. International students and students with DACA status are also not eligible at this time. On May 7, the Internal Revenue Service clarified that emergency grant aid to students under the CARES Act will not be subject to income tax. This will help ensure that students receive the most financial benefit of these grants and are not on the hook for paying tax on them. For more information on the CARES Act Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, please visit CGS's website. CGS has also released a policy fact sheet FAQ document on the HERF program.